What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleashed, the weekly panel discussion show. And the boys are back. We have our usual lineup, and I'm very, very happy to talk with this man, the jack of all trades, who has mastered them all, the senior editor of Sherdog.com, and a good pal, Mr. Ben Duffy. Ben, what's up?
Hey, I'm doing really well. I'm back in town after a week's vacation. It felt great. I missed a few things apparently, but some things, in some ways, this was a good week to take off. So yeah, I'm refreshed and I'm ready to rock.
Brilliant week to take off. You miss very little worth talking about. Hence, condensed show today. Now, let's welcome the man with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of Sherdog.com. Also, my good friend, Mr. J. Petru. J, what's up?
This was a good weekend to take off. I was writing up my stat piece for Sherdog about this article, and I was just like, boy, oh boy, these are some really bloody stones I'm trying to squeeze here. It was the slim pickings and then some, but I got enough to write about. And as a result, one of the stats that came up was actually a pretty interesting stat. That when the dust settled after the UFC Fight Night card with Joanna Rodriguez ended, all of the bonuses went to women, and the Deron Rodriguez won a post-fight fight of the night, and Mariya Agapova and Lupita Godinez got performance of the nights, and that's the first time UFC has ever given all of its bonuses only to women. So hey, votes for women, step in time.
Yeah,
Absolutely. That's great news.
well, actually, one championship would have announced that as the first time a woman had ever won an award in mixed martial arts.
Forever.
Absolutely. I mean, Chachi forever. So let's go ahead and move things along here, because despite that fantastic start of the week, the UFC was not the biggest game in town, and that's
Not even
very
close.
rare on our weekly fight cycle. In fact, the biggest game in town was not even mixed martial arts. This came courtesy of the trilogy bout between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. I did not get to watch this fight live, and I wish I did, because it was a very, very exciting fight. A lot of swings and momentum. And as someone who was sitting close to ringside for the first fight, it was really cool to see the progression in this rivalry slash trilogy between these two great heavyweights. So let's go ahead and just start off with some of the post-fight talk, the descriptions of this fight as the greatest heavyweight fight of all time, or Fury and Wilder being the best trilogy ever. Do we agree with that, fellas?
Whenever a big, exciting, crazy fight happens, hyperbole is this is I mean, honestly, it's gone on since I was a kid, but it feels like in the era of social media, instant gratification, Twitter posts, live updates, second by second analysis, it feels like every fight is the greatest fight that's ever happened. Every trilogy is the greatest trilogy to ever happen. This is the biggest that. It's always has to be the best. It has to be the top. It has to be the biggest one. So I can think of fights that I wasn't able to watch live because I was like negative 10 years old. And then I also have plenty of fights I've seen over the years, trilogies and whatnot. And so I could easily name them, but why? Why does this one have to challenge any of the past ones? Why can't it be what it is? Like this is it's something. It's kind of a pet peeve of mine that fighters are called the next Anderson Silva, the next Conor McGregor, the next so and so. Why do they have to fit there? Why do they have to go in that angle? Yes, you can look at like Uriah Hall. That's obviously a very famous example when he did really, really sad things to Adam Sella on Tough. You look at it and you go, oh, it's the next Anderson Silva. Felipe Nover, I think, wasn't he also supposed to be the fainting nurse and or the next Anderson Silva? Let it be. Let Anderson Silva be Anderson Silva. Let Felipe Nover, well, whatever he does, but let Fury Wilder stand on its own merits. Comparing it to the past is almost doing a disservice to both, like, say, the Ali trilogies that you can probably think of. I think on the broadcast they were talking about Ward Gotti trilogy. Yes, it's great. There's something that Ben, you and Keith Schillen do on the Sherdog preview shows, in that you talk about, I don't really want to say it's the best, it's in the club. It's in that pantheon of great. It doesn't have to determine 1 to 5 or something. It's just a great, terrific, it deserves the accolades it gets. And I think that's more deserving than to have to sit there and go, okay, which Ali fight was better? Okay, what about Foreman? So it almost hurt. It takes away from it. And I would like you to both rank this trilogy in terms of how good they are.
Well, I mean, I completely agree with you that it's an unfortunate kind of knee-jerk tendency we have, and I understand where it comes from. We watch these sports in the first place because we want to determine who's the best at something. So the next step from that, if somebody does something remarkable, is to wonder, well, is that the best we've ever seen?
Right.
But within 48 hours of when it happened is probably not the time you're going to get a real measured or nuanced opinion on that. It was a great fight, and it was a greater fight than we had any. I thought it was a greater fight than we had any reason to expect, because I was the one kind of leading the charge for why is this even happening? There are other people that both of them could fight, and I really felt that the second fight kind of showed how it was going to play out if they fought 10 more times. And in broad strokes, it kind of did. Fury was just clearly the niftier, classier boxer for most of the fight, but he was in all kinds of trouble in the 4th round, and again, sporadically throughout, even though Fury was starting to roll downhill on him. If you told me that, okay, yeah, Fury and Wilder are going to fight again, Wilder's going to have Fury in all kinds of trouble, like 2 knockdowns in a round, but Fury's going to end up winning by TKO late, I would be like, I'm not sure I need to see that fight. It turns out to be much better than like the little capsule synopsis made it sound. So I'm glad it happened. Certainly the greatest heavyweight fight of this year. Certainly the greatest heavyweight. I mean, it might be the greatest heavyweight trilogy I can think of right now. But yeah, like, it was a great fight.
Yeah, I think Jay, I think you brought up a good point as far as, trying to compare these things just for comparison's sake. But I'll say that this probably is being so highly placed as far as greatest trilogy of all time because I think this is the greatest of this generation of boxing. I certainly cannot think of another heavyweight trilogy, or I can't really think of a heavyweight trilogy period in this era of boxing. But the last great heavyweight trilogy I can remember was I was a kid. It was like Riddick Bowe and Evander Holyfield. And that, I mean, that's, I'm almost 40, so that's just not even in the same realm of what we're talking about now. But then Ben, like you said too, this was not supposed to be that good. We saw in the first fight was like, you saw who was clearly the better athlete, Wilder, and you saw who clearly was a better boxer in Fury, but Fury seemed off because he wasn't in the best shape. Wilder was so married to his power and he just didn't try to set anything up and he was just throwing wild the whole time. The second fight was like, okay, Fury is back in shape, and man, he put on a masterclass. And man, it was very clear that Deontay Wilder was nowhere near the caliber of boxer that Tyson Fury is. And this third fight, I thought that was the same thing that was going to happen, that he was going to go out there and get washed, and this was going to be really, really ugly. Surprisingly, Wilder actually did some real boxing training in between and looked greatly improved. But when it comes down to the X's and O's of this fight, I think we still saw what happens when someone who's just a superior athlete who is not as skilled goes up against someone who is very, very skilled and refined in his technique. For all the things that Wilder did properly, as far as throwing the jabs to the body, throwing the 1-2s, and like he really did try to set up that right hand, that's all he really tried to do was set up the right hand. The footwork still looked terrible. Half the times when he got dropped, it was really started with him being out of place with his feet and not having his legs underneath of him when he takes a shot. Am I talking crazy here technique wise? What did you guys see out there?
No, absolutely with you on this. Much improved, still not on the level of a Fury. Because the crazy and remarkable thing about Tyson Fury is he looks like a stumbling goofball everywhere except in the actual ring. This 6'9" dude who, even in good shape, he's not Deontay Wilder, even when he's in his best shape. And the most famous early highlight of him when he was like 10-0 or 12-0 was him literally punching himself in the face like while fighting some bum. Like it took me a long time to stop dismissing Tyson Fury because of that early highlight, but now he's an incredibly coordinated man for his size. He's an incredibly coordinated man for any size, but it's stunning, to see someone that size with that kind of, hand and foot movement. And, despite the fact that he's kind of a huge guy whose weight fluctuates, like good cardio for a heavyweight. I think you're absolutely right. But if you had, like, again, all about my predictions being wrong here, if you'd show me a picture of Deontay Wilder going into this, I would have been like, oh, this man reached the fork in the road and he went down the wrong way. In fact, I think I said, well, since in the second fight, like most of his offense was one giant punch that floored him, maybe he's just going to try and make sure that this time it kills him. Because when I saw that he'd put on about 25 pounds of like hard muscle, I was like, oh, there's no way he's like improved as a boxer in this time, but he had.
He did to the level that he needed to. It's just that Fury is so much better. I mean, when Fury would just be quick on the outside, stick the jab in his face, just little things like that would totally mess up when Wilder was trying to cock back that right hand. Like, you're right on the money that it basically was all set up. It was like when Dan Henderson got in that really problematic strategy where he'd be like, okay, I know I'm an incredible wrestler, but I don't care. I'm just going to stand there. Hey, Feijo, let's do oh no, I'm dead. It was just kind of the over reliance on that one kill shot, which had served him well to the point that he got to. It's just a tactician like Fury knew it was coming. It was like it's like when you knew Krokop was going to set up that head kick and you could figure it out. Suddenly it wasn't quite as terrifying. Roy Nelson is a perfect example of a fighter who way over relies on one specific destructive move, and you've seen what has happened over the years as fighters have realized, oh, all I have to do is just circle that way and stay away from that punch, jab him, and little things like that, which is what Fury did so effectively. And Duffy saying that he put on just 25 pounds of steel, his cardio completely abandoned him for all but very small explosive stretches, which didn't serve him well for a guy like Fury, who didn't really ever seem tired. He's like that. He appeared to me like the guy who can look like he's gassed, but he isn't at all. Dominic Cruz always talks about how he'll breathe with his mouth open, and he's like, oh, he's tired. He's not tired. And Fury can get out there at 277, 6'9", big, gangly, and uncoordinated, and be like, no, I can go 12 more rounds and sing a song because that's what I do. And it was really impressive to the point that you look at that and go, I thought it was going to go like that. Like when we saw Chuck and Randy won, we went, whoa, that's, Randy's incredible, but this Chuck Liddell guy is lethal. And then we saw the rematch and went, oh, that's how it's supposed to go. When Cain Velasquez fought Junior Santos the second time, we went, oh, that's what was supposed to happen. It's just different, whatever. When we thought, it played out differently for like Rose Namajunas and Joanna Jedrzejczyk is respectable, and people thought Joanna was going to box her up in the rematch. But this played out how I thought it would, but the journey to get there is not how I saw it going, and that made it compelling and interesting for me. That I was very pleased with how it turned out.
Yeah, it's almost like these fights happen out of order, the way they played out. Like this one should have been the middle fight, the second one should have been the last one, and the first one should stay in place, sort of. Like they needed that, like Fury needed that amount of time to kind of figure out how to handle Wilder. And Wilder needed to figure out, okay, I need to actually try to box. But I think it speaks to credit to both men in a lot of ways, because one, it shows for Wilder like how ridiculous of an athlete he is, that someone with that, and let's be frank, like that little bit of technique and that little bit of skill, like this is a man who had championship belts and has an Olympic medal, and he was clubbing with the inside of his wrist, a lot of times to land a shot. Which is like day one technique flaws that you see. Like when I was teaching cardio boxing class, people would do that when they first walked in the door. And this guy is winning championships like that. That with that level of skill, he's such a great athlete and has so much power that some of the best heavyweights in the world are having a difficult time, Tyson Fury included. And it speaks to Tyson Fury to that he could overcome that level of athleticism, getting dropped multiple times throughout their meetings with one another, to where we thought he was dead. That first fight, he looked like he was comatized. This third fight, and this guy got past it.
Rose like the Undertaker, as that turned in from a meme to an actual thing. By the way, if you guys had seen the lead up to it, where the hat and the Undertaker called him, be like, "Hey champ, I want you to," all that.
I mean, it's really remarkable that we got to see this. The only thing that now is like, man, this kind of sucks, is like, we could have had this fight after a Joshua fight with Fury. We could have had it, but now
we sure could have
destroyed that. But who knows?
Usyk, man, Usyk Fury, is that being discussed? Hey, Matt Hunter, hit us up.
Yeah. I should have called Matt for this show. We'll have him on soon, and we'll talk about some boxing. But before we move things on here, last thing about Fury Wilder. I mean, of course,
that Ali Frazier was the best trilogy. Continue.
Actually, yes, that is very true.
Ben.
But outside of the heavyweight division, the greatest series that you can think of in boxing, at least maybe this, if you want to separate this current generation or generations past, fine. But I'll go out there and say, Pacquiao and Marquez. 4 fights, all incredibly close until the knockout in the last one. All thrilling and controversial. That's my pick for the greatest series.
Mine's very uncontroversial, and I might be stepping on Duffy's toes. I mean, Gatti Ward, it had everything. It had everything you wanted it to have, and I was old enough to A, watch it live, and 2, understand what was going on at the time. I was 16, 18, 17. It wasn't like I have to watch it on ESPN Classic to be like, oh man, this happened 12 years before I happened. So
before you were twinkling your daddy's eye. Ben, what's your favorite series?
I'm kind of split between the two that you've thrown out there, because Gatti Ward, all the fights were just, I mean, obviously they made the legend of both men, but the stakes were much lower. We're talking about, I mean, those fights are the high watermark of Mickey Ward's career, and he lost, and then we saw what happened when Gatti got a chance to fight a couple of like actual champions. Because I know we had a couple of belts from here, here and there, but just got completely decimated by the actual best of his era. So I actually do lean towards Pacquiao Marquez. Those were kind of in my void years between the early 90s and recently, kind of some of the only fights I watched over some of those years, and were just absolutely sensational.
Definitely some good picks there. Man, they keep saying boxing's dead, and it keeps on overshadowing our 4-ounce gloves. So let's move on here to a story we really wish we didn't have to talk about. And we've seen an unfortunate string of these popping up a lot lately. This morning, we're recording this on Monday morning, October 11th. Chuck Liddell, one of the greatest of all time, a former light heavyweight champion, was arrested for domestic violence in the Los Angeles area. Last that I saw, he had made, I think, a $20,000 bail, and he is out right now. This comes on the heels of Luis Pena over the weekend getting arrested for the second time in about 3 months for domestic battery. And of course, last week, I think that was last week or the week before, John Jones with his incident in Las Vegas along those domestic abuse lines. Fellas, what the hell is going on? Why is this becoming an increasingly prevalent headline on the sports page?
Well, first thing we need to do is kind of separate Liddell out of the bag with Pena and Jones. Chuck Liddell is a private citizen. Like, as far as I'm aware, he is not officially I mean, he's not officially associated with the UFC in any way other than being in its Hall of Fame. So I don't feel as strongly one way or the other about this. This sounds unfortunate. I hope it doesn't turn out to be as bad as the reports made it sound, but I don't really have to care about that. I'm more concerned about Pena and Jones, and frankly, I'm kind of waiting to see what the UFC, that definitely has interest but does not have much in the way of an official or transparent domestic violence policy for its athletes, does about the two. Because the first response I saw when Pena's arrest happened was, well, this is where the UFC will be, or this is where Dana White will be like, well, you know, you can't put your hands on a woman and like cut him, even though Jones will get nothing of the kind.
Yeah, I believe I might have said almost those exact words when the Pena story versus, you know, comparing to Jones dropped, because we know how the UFC loves to punish fighters certain ways and not punish bigger names the same way, which that hurts my heart. But this whole story does too. Like, Chuck Liddell was supposed to be everybody's hero. I mean, we know the stories, but they're not stories about him being violent. They're stories about him being a party guy. You know, we can think of the ones in the past we've heard, and you just look at him and go, man, he's in his 50s. He beat his wife after an agreement, or after an argument, turned physical, according to the report, and the arrest report and all that stuff. Is you can't look at him and go, man, we need to get this guy a fight so he can handle his violent tendencies, like we would think like a violent Bob Ross, which, by the way, that nickname is probably not good for Luis Pena anymore, because people are starting to call him domestic violent Bob Ross, and that's not good for anybody. You don't want, even in jest, you don't want to have that attached, because then you're attaching that to, you know, the sport. That and that also. And Duffy, you did raise a good point about separating Chuck from Pena and Jones, because active fighters versus a 51-year-old who, I mean, yeah, he fought 3 years ago, but did he really? Like, would you
And
say that
he fought
actually
3 years
fought?
ago for a promotion that no longer exists?
Would you
Like,
say he
I don't
fought,
think the
though?
UFC is
I-
even responsible to make a statement about Liddell if they don't want to.
That I mean, yeah, I can understand that, Ben. I mean, I'll say this, Jay. To did he really fight 3 years ago? He was physically present in the building.
He was
He was
he
his
attended it.
physical body was there.
Yeah, but
I don't
he
know
was
about much else.
he did as much fighting as like Oscar De La Hoya that night. You know,
Yeah.
it's just there was no. He was
Yeah.
there.
De La Hoya
He
put up
attended.
more of a fight from the limo on his Instagram posts after the event than Liddell did in the cage, and to the surprise of no one. You know, I know we have the potential of going down a rabbit hole here, and we'll try to avoid that. But someone on Twitter brought up something that I know comes up in these discussions, and they were saying they wanted to separate Chuck Liddell, not because he isn't an active member of the UFC roster like Luis Pena or John Jones, but that we know Chuck Liddell has had a serious cognitive decline since his fighting days, and CTE is very likely the culprit of it when you think back to his fan friendly style in the past and the way his chin has diminished as a result. I mean, are we comfortable going the CTE route here? Because I feel like domestic violence is a greater problem than just CTE. And I think in the sport it might be exaggerated a little bit, but this is unfortunately very prevalent in just society at large.
Uh, I don't think it has to be one or the other. I'm very comfortable. Again, I'm not a doctor. Even if I were a doctor, I'm not Chuck Liddell's doctor, but he's about as much a poster boy for CTE symptoms in a former MMA star as you can think of, compounded by the fact that he cheerfully admits that he drank and snorted cocaine through most of his career, neither of which is exactly patting your brain against physical trauma. Uh, you know, but hey, we were just talking about boxing. You know, Ike Ibeabuchi had obvious CTE. It did not absolve him of legal responsibility for what he did. I mean, Chuck Liddell is still his own man. Like, and whatever the consequences end up being once all this shakes out legally, those Those are his responsibilities. And the UFC in particular and MMA promotions in general, you're in the CTE business. So you can't just wave that off either. It's like, well, he had brain damage. Well, yeah, you had brain damage working for you. If not legally, at least ethically, like some of this sits on you.
Yeah, especially if you're booking them past a point where it's responsible. You raised a good point there. Jay, sorry, didn't mean to step on your
No,
toes.
it's fine. It's just I can't. Maybe this is the attorney in me. I can't write off a an offense like that, a domestic offense, on the basis of some potential brain trauma that we're not sure about. There's so many ifs and whatever, and then you would have to try and attach a causal link to this particular brain trauma to having more of a predilection to beating your spouse. That's just there's so far to go there. And you think if that's the case, then why football players and Gary Goodridge is probably the posterist of poster boys, right up there with Chuck Liddell. I watched a Chuck Liddell a alternate commentary stream, I guess you can call, for a past BKFC event. Don't worry, I have words on BKFC today. Where Chuck was joining them, and holy smokes, he was on another planet. Just and it wasn't because of any sort of substances. It was just you could hear the gears were turning, but they'd slip every now and then like a bad transmission. And it's tough to see. It's tough to I don't know which hurts more as a fan and a media member, Pena, Jones, or Chuck, because you look at Chuck and go, everybody loves Chuck, he's whatever. But you look at Pena and go, he's in his prime, he's doing whatever. And then you look at John Jones and go, okay, John Jones does this all the time. They're all horrible. They're all bad. There's no excuse for domestic abuse is a long-standing slogan that should be across the board. And I mean, I hope, and this is the Jed Meshoot laughs at me because I'm an optimist. I hope that the UFC in 2 of 3 of these instances actually has a proper and appropriate reaction and response to what happens. And Chuck, I mean, it's hard not to have the UFC, weigh in on Chuck because, Ben, you hit the nail so hard in the head, it came out the other side of the piece of wood. All of the brain trauma happened because of what he was doing for you, UFC. So, I mean, UFC Hall of Famer Chuck Liddell, I believe, is the lead, starts the lead off on every story, UFC Hall of Famer. And it's just, God, stop. Go do a senior circuit and go hit other old men that want to be hit. Just stop hitting people that don't want to be hit.
Damn good advice right there. To wrap this up, I guess, point out a couple of things, like, to say, hey, well, Chuck has more CTE than someone else, whatever. Yeah, maybe, but CTE doesn't just start one day. It's a gradual process. So it's not unlikely to say that a John Jones or a Luis Pena, have some level of CTE because, yes, they are in the business of getting beat in the head for a living. Even if you don't see it a whole lot in the cage, it happens a lot in training. And then also another thing too, to just kind of take CTE out of the discussion and just like, hey, domestic violence is a horrible, horrible thing that happens way too often. I just looked up an article from 2017 on a site called Insider Monkey that ranks the top 10 professions with highest rates of domestic violence. So starting at number 10, NHL players. Number 9, NFL athletes. Number 8, MMA fighters. CTE in all those cases, it exists. Customer service workers at 7. Clerks 6. Textile workers 5. Nurses 4. Soldiers 3. Soldiers certainly have known some CTE issues to happen there, depending on what level of combat they've seen. Correction officers number 2, and police officers number 1 for rates of domestic violence. So CTE, I tell you this, when I was a customer service worker, no CTE was involved. We know, like, Ben, your wife is a nurse, like, she's not taking brain trauma on the job. This is not exclusive to CTE. This is a humanity thing, and it's about time real men act like real men, knock that dumb shit off. So let's keep things pushing, because believe it or not, there were some MMA fights that took place, and they didn't take place inside of someone's home or bedroom. They took place in a sanctioned bout in a cage against, the same gender, and they weren't significant others. Wow, amazing how that happens. So let's start off here with the main event of the UFC. Marina Rodriguez wins the decision over Mackenzie Dern in a fight of the night performance. More entertaining scrap than I expected. But now, swing or miss, fellas. The obvious booking is Marina Rodriguez versus Joanna Jedrzejczyk.
All the swings. I can't swing this enough because Marina Rodriguez, whether we agree or not, I had her winning that fight, lost a decision to Carla Esparza. And therefore, she could not possibly be above Carla Esparza in the title shot logjam that is the strawweight division. Now, we know obviously what's going to happen if Weili Zhang beats Rosa Namajunas, is that they're going to make a trilogy and further delay the stupid pecking order of how things go in the division. So I don't want to see Joanna Jedrzejczyk get a title shot off of, I'm pretty sure she hasn't fought since she fought Weili Zhang. Yeah, that's been about what? 18 months. 19 months from ago. Yeah, I want to see that, because how does that not scream fun Muay Thai, beat the crap out of each other fight? And if we're going to go that route for Joanna Jedrzejczyk, I'm all for it. I don't really need to see her fight Jessica Penne on her second run. I don't want to see her, I don't want to see the rematch tour as a challenger. So yeah, I think it's a fresh matchup. It's a fun style clash, and it keeps both of them busy while not giving them something they haven't earned yet.
Yeah, love that. Quick anecdote, lest any of you ever wonder, or doubt, out there that fighters, on a lot of levels are just like you and me. The Weili versus Jedrzejczyk fight, I actually watched that with UFC welterweight Alex Morono, and just a bunch of people from his gym. And obviously, everybody was just coming unglued as the fight went on. It's one of the greatest fights of all time. It was the fight of the year It was my fight of the year for 2020. One of probably the 4 or 5 greatest fights I've ever seen. And what you remember, aside from just the unbelievable volume of strikes, the swings and momentum, was the hematoma. And Alex looks to me in between, was it round 4 and 5, maybe, goes, "What do you think is in that thing?" Like, damn it, Jim, I'm a writer, not a doctor. I have no idea what the hell is in that thing.
An alien.
Like, you're the guy that sees hematomas all the time. I don't know what's in that. I don't want to think about what's in it.
Pure
anger. I love the fight. Yeah, pure anger.
Yeah, that
Polish colony is like, yeah. Oof.
Yeah, that was, it's like alien was gonna pop out of there, and it was. Like, actually, I think what I said right after that fight was like, it looked like RoboCop with his helmet off. That was one of the freakier sights in MMA. Yeah, I'm all for Rodriguez versus Jedrzejczyk. Like, I want to see fresh matchups, like you said, Jay. And just, how do you not love that pairing? And Rodriguez now beating number 4 Mackenzie Dern. We're talking title sphere now. A win over Jedrzejczyk cements the fact that you are deserving of a title shot. And if Joanna can beat Rodriguez, hey, you might have earned your way back. So this is a win-win in a division that is packed with action matchups, that's packed with great styles, and these two haven't met before. Why not? Please.
If I could throw one last thing in here, more of an oddball. So, peeling back the curtain for a second, on a lot of Sherdog Fight Finder major cards, I'm the one who will set the title of the event. When I set the title of this event, when it was first announced, it was Rodriguez versus Dern, because Rodriguez was ranked higher. As we got closer to the fight, neither had competed, obviously. There hadn't been any major shifts in fighters, and Dern ranked over Rodriguez somehow. So, and then it became Dern versus Rodriguez, unbeknownst to me. So there you go.
Gotta love the rankings. They make a lot of sense. All right, fellas. Let's move things along to shallow cuts. Forgot to set my clock. We're gonna have 30 seconds to answer these questions. And I today will be assigning the questions because I never do that anymore. So let's go ahead and I will start with you on this one, Ben. Hmm. Alexander Romanov, the future at heavyweight, or a guy who will hit a wall?
He's a guy who will hit a wall. He is a guy who has hit a wall, also known as his cardio. And while it led to a win, it didn't give me, and I'm talking about his last fight, not the Vanderhoff fight. Like we've seen what the wall is. The guy's the size of a house, and his favorite technique is to throw another man the size of the house all around the cage. He's going to hit a wall in every fight that he doesn't win in the first round. Top 10 potential, but he's not at the top of this class of young heavyweights. I like that's a limitation.
Okay, that was a very quick, intelligently put there, Ben. You are the man, sir. Now, Jay, I'm gonna kick it over to you. What do you make of Deron Winn versus Phil Hawes and its replacements get scrapped at the last minute?
As soon as Chris Curtis volunteered to step in on fight day, I knew it wasn't going to happen. And that is not because I dislike Chris Curtis or the fact that he is retired after like 3 fights I've covered for Sherdog. After he loses, he'll retire. He literally retired in the middle of the day at PFL, only to have to come back as a short notice replacement. Literally, also again, literally put down the donut so he could go back out there to fight Magomedov and lose again, retire again, went to contender series. Yeah, I don't like it.
And we almost got a James Krause 24-hour fight
No, we
resurrection.
No,
we almost did.
No, we didn't. I don't think he even has his license in Nevada.
I mean, can a man just hold on to dreams? Can a man just believe, Jay? You just thanks for telling me.
It's why we can't have nice things. I know, and it's my fault. I'll take it.
And I mean, considering what he said about the Tim Elliott fight, hey, maybe that wouldn't have been his biggest mistake of the weekend if he'd actually gotten in there against Phil Hawes.
Hey, can I raise something real quick to extend? I'm not really talking about this, but the Krause thing. Is that the best PR move a fighter can make? Calling out and saying, I'll step in for a fight that he knows he can't possibly step in for. Like, so that the community gets behind him, rallies. He's a hero. He's the guy, he's the I know a guy. Chris Donald Cerrone hasn't done that. Angela Hill has done that to an extent, and Alex Morono has done that. There's a few guys that do that, and girls. But to be able to know it is an impossibility. You cannot at 12:45 on the day of the weigh-ins stop at 1:00. You have to make the middleweight limit by that time to qualify to fight. So to know on Twitter, I want to take this fight, that has to be just brilliance. Because people will not view it as how I looked at it and went, well, that's brilliant.
It's free money. It's free money.
Exactly.
Like it's the easiest layup you could ever have. I mean, and the thing is that James Krause has earned that currency. Like he has actually stepped in at the very last minute
Duffy and I were
saved
there.
the booking. Yeah, I mean, he's done this before, so who's to say he won't do it again? And when he is in the cage, he's consistently been an action fighter who has defied odds. I mean, hey, at this point, he can say that anytime. And remember when it got to be sort of a joke with Cerrone when like a heavyweight fight will fall out and he tweet out, I know a guy. And everybody would just love him for it.
Mm-hmm.
James Krause has picked up that torch and ran with it. He can do this until he just passes it on to someone else. So I'm all for it.
Hey, you made me think about something when you said that about Krause being reliable. I have a shallow cut for you, Ant.
Okay.
So you watched the event, you know what happened. Randy Brown, co-main event, beat Jared Gooden. Great fight. I thought it was fight of the night. Hurt his toe, all of the drama that came with it. What's it going to take for Randy Brown to break out of that action fighter list? Like you can think of the guys that are in there, the Nico Prices and Morono's in there, Michelle Pajeda, all the names that are in there. What will it take for Randy Brown to break out from that pack?
It'll take just him turning into a different person. I think like he, when it comes to sometimes the fight IQ, the strategy, the approach and the execution, like it's just something missing, keeping him from that top level. I think he has all the athleticism to get him there, but he's got to use it the right way. But my question is, why would he want to break out? I don't think he's a title challenger, even at his best. So stay in that role. Stay as the action guy. You got a steady paycheck. You got to get some bonuses. He's attractive to another promotion. Should his contract expire and he wants to explore free agency, this is the right move for someone on his caliber.
If I may chime in, it also doesn't help that the UFC has observed him and decided that this is what he's going to be, because in his last 6 fights, 4 of his opponents have been Nico Price, Brian Barberena, Vicente Luque, and Cowboy Oliveira.
It
Like,
is
they've
that
decided that this
corrupt.
guy is like, you know, the demolition derby card that they're just going to smash up against all the other cards and hope something wild happens. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to turn into a different fighter when you're getting thrown in there with, you know, other people that they think are the same type of, you know, same type of fighter. Uh, but kind of like Pereira versus Chaos Williams against Gooden, he seemed a little bit more measured. You know, maybe he's deciding this is the time to buckle down and take it a little more seriously. He's, for the wars he's been in, he's only 31, and I mean, hoping this toe doesn't just turn into a chronic thing. He's been fairly healthy as well. Interested to see what he does.
Yeah, I'm thinking the way they're matchmaking these like super exciting welterweights, it's kind of like if you just had you know, some tournament of like action stars from the 90s or something. If you put like Van
Yeah.
Damme and Jeff Speakman against Steven Seagal and Cynthia Rothrick or something like
Yeah.
that. Like it's just this mix and mash of just pure violence and chaos. And like I'm here for it. Like it's and I think for fighters who against the top level competition have shown themselves not quite there, this is sort of the best thing for them in a way to like just keep them in the UFC, keep them with those paychecks, and keep them going. And like I said before, make them more attractive to other promotions should they look outside the octagon.
So Nico Price's last several opponents: Cowboy Oliveira, Michelle Pereira, Donald Cerrone, Vicente Luque, James Vick, Jeff Neal, Tim Means, Abdul Razak Al Hassan, Randy Brown, and then skip one, Vicente Luque, skip one, Alex Morono. It's all smash them up and let's see the one that gets up, and that's Vicente Luque.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of what I think the UFC should be doing with these sort of fighters. Like, unless you spread the action out, but then you're gonna likely just get them decimated one by one by some of the higher level guys. So, and especially in this day and age where they're trying to muster something that's worth our time and attention for this endless series of cards, you know, guaranteeing action a couple spots here and there might be the best bet to stretch out their worth. So fellas, let's go ahead and briefly ask that age-old question: how's taste my crow? Break out the butter for the pan, break out the salt, the cracked pepper, and whatever else you choose to flavor your food with. Ben, how's taste my crow this week?
Oh man. I normally, I mean, my biases and my prejudices in this sport are, you know, they are transparent and easily known. I don't pick against Texas guys very often. I almost never pick against guys from Houston, but you know, even folks from that like satellite town up north with the Cowboy football team, like they usually get some love from me. And I gave up on Damon Jackson too early. You know, like Damon Jackson is a hell of a fun fighter to watch. He and at like kind of the LFA level, he's a really, really hard out for anybody. But I thought maybe he was just a little too one dimensional and not quite athletic enough at the UFC level to get it done, even against Charles Rosa. And that's what I get for picking against a Fortis guy. You know, that's what I get for picking against the Texan. You know, great job, Damon Jackson. You know, beat Charles Rosa, and you know, Charles Rosa is himself. You know, like a tough guy, not an easy out, and a guy whose strengths on paper at least seem to stack up well against Jackson's. But hey, I learned my lesson. I'm happy to have that crow. It's some Dallas flavor crow, you know, and then I'll take it.
Matt Wells will be very, very upset with you right now, Ben. Jay, what's your house taste my crow this week?
We're leaving the country. We're going to put a little garlic, a little trigasar, I believe is the correct pronunciation, because Colombian queen Sabina Mazo fell victim to Mariya Agapova. I'm feeling prescient right now. I'm feeling like I shouldn't step on the toes by really diving into this topic. So all I'll say is I expected, and I even said this on the show last week, Sabina Mazo was going to kick her in the head. I think those were my words. She did, but it didn't matter because she got punched in the face 100 times and then dropped, choked out, just beaten down. And so I'm eating crow because I had Sabina Mazo as the 9-2 fighter that would get the leg up over her opponent. And the other thing happened.
Okay. My crow isn't too special this week. I mean, I was just very surprised to see Rodriguez manage to get out of some really, really dangerous positions against Mackenzie Dern. Like, we already know like her wrestling isn't the best. She's not the best at getting the fight to the floor, but once it's there, you're kind of gonna get wrapped up into a pretzel. She wasn't able to wrap up Rodriguez in quite the pretzel I thought it would be, but um definitely some work to do on Dern's part to continue her complete transformation into a mixed martial artist. But hey, overall entertaining scrap. Ben, I'm going to kick it to you for the greatest title segment in all of media. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons. What's your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, I mean, speaking of Mariya Agapova versus Sabina Mazo, Agapova was on the SureDog.com All Turkey team last year for taking the biggest upsets in UFC history against Shayna Dobson, someone who I believe was 0-3 in the UFC at the time, and had really just been kept on roster to lose to Agapova. She comes out, she's doing like her little, like mean mug and her like weird Eastern European club dance or whatever the hell that was, and gasses out so bad they have to stretcher her out after she loses. I saw her come in against Mazo and do the exact same thing, and I'm like, oh, this chick has not learned anything, has she? What was I thinking? But you know what? Maybe she's just someone that's going to do goofy dances before she fights, but she actually seemed more prepared and showed flashes of what we thought she might be. The next Joanna Jedrzejczyk, just a high volume striker with deceptive sting on the punches and enormous ego, and that's fine as long as you keep winning. I was surprised, Mr. Falcons, and I'm happy to be surprised.
All right, nice. Jake, so we're running real low on the clock. We got like 5 minutes before we got to wrap things up. What's your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
BKFC Montana happened. I mean, that it happened. The whomever sanctioned it, I don't know if it was the commission or if it was on land that didn't need to be on the commission. And the headliner was, oh yeah, so we have public concerns about brain health and mismatches and fighters on bad losing streaks. Let's put Melvin Gillard in the main event. What happened? Melvin Gillard took a straight left hand, one straight left hand, by the way, straight bang, all the orbital. I think there was like five fractures in his orbital out through the ropes knockout, and we all felt bad about it because of course that was going to happen. And I am just so not surprised, Mr. Falcons, that this event happened and they stuck to their guns in a Feldmanian way. Yeah, we're going to go with Feldmanian way. And they don't learn.
Very, very nice one right there, Jay. An event that flew under the radar with Tyson Fury and Deontay
Crazy
Wilder.
violent, by the way. 10 for 10 for knockouts, but
Yeah.
you don't feel good about some of those knockouts.
Yeah, and we still
Especially
haven't.
now.
Yeah, it still feels a little icky right there.
Oh,
So
yeah.
now my I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment comes courtesy of Curtis Blaydes, who revealed something that we kind of knew but was more of a rumor. The UFC likes to leak quote unquote fight news and announcements before bout agreements are signed, presumably to pressure fighters into signing and kind of get the fans on board. So he revealed this and it was sort of like a just a blurb, like very casually said this.
Yeah, I missed this.
Toward MMA News interview with MMAnews.com. So can't say we're shocked, but hey, it is what it is. All right, fellas. So we've got Bellator 268 coming up this weekend. Vadim Nemkov is in the headliner there as the light heavyweight tournament continues. Ryan Bader fighting Corey Anderson in the co-main event. We've got the UFC with the dubious booking of Aspen Ladd main eventing so soon after missing on the scale, but at least she's at featherweight against Norma Dumont, replacing Holly Holm. What fights are we looking forward to? Give me one fight from both cards that you are looking forward to this weekend.
I like Bader versus Anderson on the Bellator card. Anderson is probably the best light heavyweight in the world right now that Bader actually has a plausible shot at victory against. Obviously, it's better for Bellator if Anderson wins because he's a fresh face for Nemkov. On the UFC card, though, I'm not comfortable with how we got here. If this induces Aspen Ladd to stay at featherweight, it's it's a means to at least a decent end. You know, I ranted at length 2 weeks ago about how either Chasson or Ladd could probably have a title shot tomorrow if they were willing to fight Amanda Nunes at featherweight. You know, maybe this is how we get there.
All right, Jay.
I am looking forward to the Henderson family competing at Bellator 268. That's right. I said the Henderson family. Ben Henderson's fighting in the main card. He's fighting Brent Primus. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm also very excited about Corey Anderson beating Ryan Bader because that's going to be wild. But his wife is fighting in an amateur undercard bout, the first fight of the night, Mariya Henderson. So that's going to be fun. I want to see if they're both carrying toothpicks into the cage. And in terms of the UFC event, I want to say NA and be rude, but Julian Marquez versus Jordan Wright, someone's going to get knocked out. I don't really care who. Doesn't matter. Because like the UFC is clearly showing us, they don't really care. It doesn't matter. This card is just going to happen, and we're going to let it happen. When Andrei Arlovsky is co-headlining an event in 2021 because he is legitimately the best fighter on this roster above the rest of the fighters, we got a problem. There are 0 ranked fighters on this UFC card in their divisions they're competing at. So this fight's going to happen. And we're going to let it happen. But I want to see Ant. I want to see if you're going to talk about Sajara Eubanks on the UFC card.
Yeah, right. The UFC card, I'm not. I can't really say I'm looking forward to any particular matchup, but I'm always down for a Danny Roberts fight. Hot Chocolate Man never ceases to entertain, whether that be to his benefit or to his detriment. So I'll tune in for that against Ramazan Emev. I think I pronounced that one right. And on the Bellator card, I mean Henry Corrales is one of those guys that I like to watch all the time, but I am more looking forward to the Mariya Henderson MMA debut. Just for hey, that should be a nice heartwarming story if she gets a win. So, gentlemen, I think that's going to do it for this edition of Unleash. Big thanks to Ben and Jay for holding it down every week. You can find them on sherdog.com. Of course, you can catch me on MMA on Point. And you know what you got to do. Like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Stay beautiful, stay positive, don't hit your significant other, and stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.